Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is episode 16 of the Andalusia Knits Knitting Podcast. This is a series on my channel where I take you through what I'm currently knitting on, what I'm currently designing, and just anything knitting related going on in my life at the moment. I got a great episode today. I've got a pattern release to talk about. I have a surprise finished object to talk about, and several whips that I'm also very excited about. It's going to be a good one, and I think in honor of my Sweet 16, I might even throw a temper tantrum at some point. Hopefully not, but we'll see. We'll see how the knitting treats me. But with that, let's just go ahead and get started. This is going to be a jam-packed episode, and I'm excited to talk about my knitting, so let's go. Okay, so first up today, I just really quickly wanted to announce that the Chosen One Cowl is now available as a pattern to download on Ravelry. You have seen this as a finished object on the podcast before, but I believe this is the first episode where the pattern has been available to download. So I will leave a link in the description to that if you're interested in checking it out. It's a very cozy cowl knit in the round stranded color work. And I love this thing, and specifically I want to try this on as a hood in this video. So someone in one of my YouTube shorts recently asked if I could show this being worn as a hood, and so we'll give it a try. I'm not sure how I'm going to look at this. Please don't laugh if it looks crazy. But so here's the hood view. You know, honestly, I don't hate this. I fully went in thinking like, you know, they asked nicely, but I know I'm going to look completely ridiculous. But honestly, I am kind of digging this. I really wish it wasn't 80 degrees outside right now, because this is kind of cool. But anyways, so for my YouTube short viewer who wanted to know what this looks like as a hood, honestly, not bad. I think that the twist is really helping things out. I think that kind of keeps things tight around the neck still. Very surprised that this looks as good as it does as a hood. But yeah, anyways, this is the Chosen One Cowl. Whether you want to wear it as a cowl or as a hood, the pattern is now available on Ravelry. And like I said, a link to that will be in the description below if you want to check it out. So I have a finished object today that I don't believe y'all have ever actually seen as a work in progress. I believe the last time I talked about this project, I had a colorwork swatch where I had tried some experiments doing, excuse me, straight colorwork where it's kind of like random, choose your own adventure style. I think I called it like controlled chaos or something. That is still a good idea. It needs a little more time percolating in my brain though. So then I moved on to trying some stranded color work using the technique that I've been doing in my last few designs where you knit the background colors and purl the contrast colors. And I wanted to try that technique out with some more traditional Fair Isle motifs. And so I started out with a couple very common ones, which is hearts and this 8-pointed star. And as you can see, like, you can kind of vaguely make out the shapes that they're supposed to be, but the traditional designs have a lot of, like, you know, interior stuff going on between the contrast and the background color. And this technique that really gets muddied up and just looks more busy than intentional or interesting. And so from there, I tried an 8-pointed star doing just filling in everything, and that worked out a whole lot more. Now, I'm still not super pleased with the very tips of the star. As you can kind of see, I might need to go back and try some fiddling with that, but that worked out pretty well too. And then I went back to what this technique is best at, and that is diagonal lines. And so I tried coming up with a motif that was like vaguely traditional Fair Isle, but would work the best for this like knit and purl stranded color work technique. And so I came up with this stuff at top. And so it's kind of like a vaguely XO design like you see in Fair Isle stuff. It was a bit challenging because this technique, it really shines the best, not at like creating big blobs of color or pictorial knitting, but it really shines at creating diagonal lines. And that's a pretty constricting design constraint to work with. But I really enjoyed what I had come up with. Like I said, like, it's not exactly an XO design like you would see in traditional Fair Isle, but it was about as close as my brain could get at this point using the technique that I wanted to use. So anyways, did all of that swatching, and I actually knit up a hat. And I have to say, I'm like 50% pleased with it. I am pleased with like the first half of it, but then we get to the crown shaping and like everything goes off the rails. So let's go ahead and display it now here. And I think this might be the first time I'm ever showing my mannequin head on camera. It is a little odd. It's definitely smaller than my head, but I am not entirely convinced that it is shaped like a human head because like the hats always go down way past where the eyes would be. But regardless, it is nice to have this just to sort of model the look without me having to put it on. And so like I said, I like the first half. So the bottom here, I've got some just like ribbing. And I was surprised, if we look here at the beginning of round, you can see like a very visible jog there in the ribbing. And so whenever I'm doing stripes in the round, my first go-to is to just knit a round in the new color and then slip the first stitch of the second round of the new color. If you're doing like thick stripes like this in a stockinette, that's generally more than enough to sort of like fudge everything and make it look good enough. And so that's what I did with the ribbing stripes as well. And clearly like slipping the first stitch of the second round is not enough to like hide that jog for the ribs. So I'm going to have to go back and do some research about like disguising the jog for ribs specifically. I thought that if anything, it would be easier than doing it in stockinette, but that was incorrect. But I like the look of the stripes though, beyond the jog problem I've got there. And so then I incorporated the design I showed you in the swatch, and things are going well until we get to the decreases. And so I did the spiral decreases, basically where you're doing like a knit two together, one before the last knit two together, so it kind of creates this spiral effect. And while the spiral effect always looks cool, always looks good, the contrast color, I just didn't quite know what to do with it. I had enough wiggle room in terms of the shaping to kind of keep the lines zigzagging a little bit, but by the time you get up to the very top, it just looks really messy and busy and confused. And so I'm gonna have to try a couple new things for this crown shaping. I have some new ideas for how to make it look a little bit nicer and neater. But the way it is right now, it just doesn't, like, you can't really tell that the lines are zigzagging. It kind of just looks like they're like puttering out or something. I don't know. Not crazy about the top, but the rest of this I don't entirely hate. I probably will go back and do a smaller needle size on the ribbing. It feels a little loosey-goosey relative to the gauge of the stranded color work. It feels kind of odd, but beyond that, this is a good first try. I really love, you know, tinkering with hat designs because unlike bigger things, I can sort of, you know, churn out a hat in a few days. It's not a super big deal to like try different prototypes, try different experiments with shaping and stuff. So I'm excited to try some new things, but man, I was really hoping that I was going to get this on the first attempt. That it rarely happens with designs, but every once in a while, you know, things just line up and everything goes perfectly on your first try. And there for a while, I thought that was going to happen with this, and then I got to those decreases, and it's just not working out exactly like I wanted. But I'm excited about trying some new stuff with this. I really love this yarn. I don't think I mentioned last time, this is Kelborn Woolen Scout, which is their DK weight yarn, I believe. And the colors are chartreuse for this orangey green. I'm not sure what this blue gray is, but I'm really loving the contrast between these two colors, and I'm really loving the way this yarn feels. This is my first time using any sort of Kelborn woolen yarn, and so whenever I buy a yarn that I'm not familiar with, my first step is typically to go to Ravelry and read the comments and see what people have to say about it. And I found a lot of people saying that this yarn pills really badly. And that is kind of a confusing comment to read when you're trying to gauge the quality of a yarn online, because while it's absolutely true, there are some yarns that pill worse than others. It's also absolutely true that a lot of people who are leaving angry comments about yarn pilling online don't realize that, like, every animal fiber yarn is going to pill. That's a non-negotiable. Like, you're not ever going to find a wool yarn that is completely pill-free. That is just not ever going to happen. So when you see comments saying like, oh, this yarn pills really bad, you really have to do some detective work about, okay, does this yarn really pill worse than other comparable yarns? Or is this just people being unreasonable and wanting like a yarn that never pills? And I have to say, you know, I haven't worn this hat and I've only sort of like taken it on and off this mannequin hand a few times. And there, it is starting to look a little bit fuzzier than when I knit it up. So I'll be interested to see just how much this actually does or doesn't pill. But anyways, for now, that's my hat. I'll stop rambling about it and move on to something else. So now in terms of works in progress, my first thing I want to show is a second sample that I have started knitting for a design that I actually showed you last episode. So if you remember, I showed you this cowl design last time, and I was talking about, while I was pleasantly surprised at how well the variegated yarn did at showing the zigzag striping, this just didn't feel like the definitive sample for the design. Like, it just didn't show off enough detail. And so I wanted to knit a second one. And I believe in that episode I talked about how this was probably not going to happen anytime soon because I wasn't in the mood to knit a second identical one of these. But actually I am about like 2/3 of the way through at this point. I've made a lot of progress, and I'm very glad that I have done this second sample because it is showing a lot more of the detail that I wanted to see in that first one. And mainly the things that I think this one shows off better is the fact that the striping, and it's kind of hard to see, it's a little bit wrinkly. I haven't blocked this or anything yet, so the stitches aren't all pretty yet, but the stripes are not the same width across the entire pattern, across the entire repeat. And it shows up a lot more in this solid color version. And on top of that, also the chart repeat is not symmetrical, and it shows up, you can kind of see where that asymmetry happens a lot better in these like sort of like tiny short zigzags right here. And that shows up a lot better in this solid color version as well. And this is another one where I have done the sort of variation on traditional color work, and I have knit the background color and purled the contrast color just for a little texture. And so this one's coming along great, and like I said, I'm very glad that I went ahead and did this second version. I think this is going to be a lot more legible to people who might want to knit this and are looking at photos to make that decision than this first one, just simply because like it gives zigzags, but like beyond that, like all the detail is lost. That being said, like this yarn is so soft. I don't know if I talked about this yarn last episode either, but this is Knit Pick Swish, which is their superwash yarn, and this is another one like the Kelborn Woolens that has lots of comments online about how badly it pills, and this is one I don't have to do any further research. Like, it feels just stupidly soft. I know this thing is going to pill the moment like any sort of friction meets it, but that's okay. And so for this one I did the Barocco Vintage DK, which has been sort of my go-to for cowl knitting in the last couple months. I'm not entirely sure what the colorways on this are, but I really love the two-tone blue. That's really working out well. And beyond that, I don't know that I have much more to say about this one. This is clearly like a variation of the Chosen One cowl. This was inspired by that design. But the thing that is mostly different about this one is that like the proportion of contrast color to background color stays consistent across the entire cowl, whereas the Chosen One like starts all background color and then slowly makes its way to all contrast color and then back around. This one stays like the stripes stay like distinct and without like merging into like an entire like section of purl work for this one. This one also still doesn't have a name, and I'm getting like I'm writing the pattern at this point, so like that is absolutely something I need to come up with pretty quickly. And someone, I don't remember if it was on here or on TikTok or on Instagram, somebody like mentioned the name Turbulence, I think, when I showed this version, and I really liked that. I thought that was a very apt name. I was hesitant to use it though because turbulence is kind of typically a negative word. That's something that you don't want to encounter. So I wasn't sure that. I thought that was a very good name. So like whoever came up with that name, if you're watching, thank you for that idea. That's a fantastic idea. I thought it was very apt for this look. But like it is an official name, I'm not sure what I'm going to go with yet. And that's something I got to work on though. But in terms of the design, you know, like I've already knit this once. I think everything's going to go fine. I'm really excited to get to the point where I join the two ends together. So I mentioned last time, unlike the Chosen One cowl, This is not the ends are not grafted together; they're seamed together. So both ends are bound off and then seamed together, which creates a little bit of a visible seam. But this process was just so much easier and so much faster. Not necessarily faster, but just so much easier than doing the grafting. And I think it's really going to be great in this darker color. I think it's going to be even harder to see that seam in a dark blue as opposed to that light gray. So yeah, new cowl design. Be on the lookout for it. It should be coming out soon. Excited about it. Just need to finish up this second sample and get the pattern right. And the pattern, I don't know what that word just came out of my mouth was, but get the pattern written and yeah, go from there. Next up is a work in progress that was not supposed to be a work in progress at this point. There is a lady I follow on Instagram, and her username is Needle and Feather, and she has this really beautiful, like, patchwork, colorwork blanket design, and she's always advertising, making these beautiful videos about it on Instagram. And I see them all the time. I'm like, man, I really want to do a blanket design. That would be really fun. That looks like a lot of fun. Mostly because I want to do the thing where you like roll it up and then like let it unfurl. That looks like that would be a lot of fun to shoot one of those. But anyways, as beautiful as her colorwork version is, like I don't think I'm ready to do a colorwork blanket. I have a lot of colorwork designs in the mix right now, and I want to try something that is maybe a little less complex than that. And so I started doing some swatching in the style of a, what's the word? I've completely lost the word. Log cabin style knitting. So log cabin style knitting is basically where you knit a square of fabric, and then you pick up stitches along one of those edges and knit another square, and then you pick up stitches along both of those edges and knit another square. And basically you're just like knitting a spiral of squares and rectangles. And this is a technique that we get from quilting, but you can do it with knitting as well. And so I wanted to try different ways of arranging the squares. So in a traditional log cabin blanket, like I said, it creates kind of like a spiral of rectangles out. But that is not necessarily the only way that you can like pick up stitches along the edges and knit them. And so I started knitting a swatch, trying some different techniques for that. And the version I like the most is here. And so basically what I did is I knit this center square first, and then I knit these two oh, can't see it. Let's see if I can hold this up better. Center square first, and then I knit these two dark blue edge squares on either side of it, and then I knit on the top and bottom of it, and then I knit side to side. So basically instead of doing a spiral, you knit top and bottom, left and right, and you just do that over and over again. And like I said, I wasn't planning on doing any more than just a little swatching like this, but I actually went ahead and pulled out some yarn and started an actual version. I got some beautiful shades of like green and purple here that I really like. I think it's going to work out well. And I was very surprised in doing the math in terms of how many colors I would need. So the last time I knit a log cabin blanket, I started with not enough colors. So like sometimes a square in one shade would be touching a square in the same shade, and that drove me crazy. I had to restart and add more colors so that wouldn't happen. And I think for a regular log cabin blanket, it takes 5 colors to make sure that no color is touching itself. But for this design, actually, you only need 3. And that is a really nice thing because when I was doing some experiments in Stitch Mastery, seeing like how many colors I would need to do, I started with 5, and it just felt, I mean, it worked. Like none of the colors were touching each other or touching themselves, but it felt so chaotic. It didn't feel rustic, it didn't feel like old-timey, it just felt like absolute color chaos. So I'm very glad that I was able to whittle 5 colors down to 3. I think it's going to feel a lot more like intentional and look a lot more like the eye is going to be able to understand a little bit better what's going on, I think, than with with more colors than this. But yeah, so I just started this last night. I haven't gotten too far on it. And the bad thing about knitting these sort of modular style blankets is they start fast. I mean, I feel like I've made so much progress. I feel like I'm flying right now. But I know very quickly, like as these edges start to get longer and longer, it's going to take more and more time to knit these individual sections. So I should enjoy the fast part while it lasts, because that is quickly going to stop being the case. But like I said, I'm really happy with the design. I'm happy with the colors I've chosen at this point. And now it's just a matter of knitting the blanket itself. I think I'm going to give it a try. So the last time that I did a log cabin blanket, I'm pretty sure I just left the edges raw, which also, to my horror, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do for the edging for this one, I was like, I think I just left them raw last time, which seems like crazy to me now because it was a gift knit. So this time I am going to try doing my applied I-cord edging that I did for the walking distance scarf pattern. I'm going to try doing that around the edges here too. And I think I'm probably going to go with a fourth color for that, maybe like a gray or just some sort of neutral, so it'll be easy to match with all these different shades. But it's a ways off, but I'm excited to see that border like in a larger yarn and like in the context of a blanket as opposed to the scarf. But yeah, so there's that. And then also I had a second swatch that I was trying something, and I thought I had a really great idea, and maybe I do, maybe I just haven't done it enough. But my thought was that if I knit these squares and I do some short row shaping in the middle of them, the pickups are not going to be any more complicated, because like the row counts and the stitch counts will be the same. But it will create some like interesting shapes. It won't just all be boring squares and rectangles. And I don't know if it's just a matter of I haven't like gone big enough yet or anything, but I did a couple sections with some short row shaping, and it just really doesn't look, it doesn't look like an unusual shape. It just looks bad. It just looks like a bad rectangle. It doesn't look like an intentional non-rectangular shape. And I'm going to have to do some research on short rows for garter stitch. I haven't really done much of that. And so my preferred method is just German short rows. And so I did that here. And it's very clear like where the short rows are happening. So I think I might have to find a more garter stitch friendly approach to short rows as well. But so this needs some more experimenting. I definitely want to try some more on this. I think there might still be an idea there, but I'm not entirely sure yet. We'll have to try more on it. And then finally today, I won't spend any time at all talking on this. I have the Sandpoint Pullover, and this is a sweater pattern that I've been working on and off for basically all of this year at this point. And I have knit the back panel and a sleeve at this point, and I'm working on the front panel now. And I made a couple inches of progress since the last time I talked about this, but nothing of note has happened. At this point, it's still just like basic stockinette knitting. When I get to the underarm, some interesting things will happen. I'll do a little bit of reverse stockinette, and I'll have to do some collar shaping for a zipper installation. But yeah, this one is just sort of like my last resort, I guess. Last resort makes it seem like it's a bad pattern. It's a last resort because it's just boring basic stockinette knitting for a garment that I'm not going to be able to wear for the next like 6 months. So I'm not in any rush, but slowly but surely making some progress on this. Like I said, I've done a couple inches, I think, since the last time we talked about it, but nothing to write home about on this one. Alrighty, well, I think that is going to do it for today's episode. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did enjoy the episode, I would appreciate it if you could leave it a like, and if you enjoy knitting videos like this and don't want to miss an upload from me, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel as well. And once again, the Chosen One cowl that I showed you at the beginning of the video is now available to download as a pattern on Ravelry if you'd like to check that out. But with that, I think I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll see y'all in the next one.